Welcome to Conversations at the Effie. I am your host, Aaron Shufletoski. Here we are at the Effie Arts Collective, situated on the unceded territory at Kamloops North. Today, I have a North Shore visionary, a squatter, just a mover and shaker of all things, Mitchell Forgie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Aaron.
So, how long have you been involved in the North Shore of Kamloops?
I moved to Kamloops from London, England in 2009, and I had never really been that sort of civically participatory up until then in my life. And I was young, I was 20, and I decided that I would turn up at a city budget meeting because I was finding that Kamloops, at least for me, coming from London, didn't really have a lot of nightlife, didn't have like a strong sort of arts support going around. And I grew up in Edmonton, which really did. And so I sort of viewed that as something that could change. And so I, not knowing what else to do, showed up at a budget hearing at City Hall to see, what was happening and say my two bits. And the mayor at the time deferred me to planning staff and said, oh, well, we actually have city planning staff and they are here talking about these things and encouraging this stuff. And I recommend you go and talk to them. And at that forum, I met a fellow named Peter Moutry, which would actually be a great candidate for the show because he's just a wealth of history and information, and he's a fantastic conversationalist. But Peter started talking to me about how the Business Improvement Association, the city planners, had really viewed the North Shore as this beautiful opportunity zone. It was this place that we were going to see young, vibrant people move into. It was going to be the classic, artists and hippies creating this vibrant zone. And we had, at that time in 2008, a North Shore neighborhood plan that had just passed. It had won national awards for planning. And he said, this is the spot. And the other thing that really foundationally happened to me at that time was then Mayor Peter Millibar, in a strange, one-off interaction, came up to me after the thing, as the politicians do, just mixing with the crowd and talking. And he said, the role of government is not to drive the bus on these things. Is what we do is we regulate. And so if you want to see a change in our city, you need to be the person who goes and makes that change. You need to go out there and whatever avenue that is, whether it's through nonprofit, through advocacy, through entrepreneurship, you need to go out and make that change. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember specifically what he said 13 years ago, but so I interpreted that as I don't know what risk is, and I have a credit card, so I'm going to try to start a business.
Living in the UK, what would make you decide to come to Kamloops?
So my wife and I both love the UK. We go a couple times a year still. We both joke that if we had have never gotten married, we would have never started the business. And had we never started the business, we would both be living in the UK right now. But because we got married and started the business, we both live here, even though we'd still both like to live in the UK. I dropped out of high school and I moved to the UK. And while I was there, I had a bunch of jobs. I worked in nightclubs. I was a bike courier. And I worked for a company called Orange Phones. And we would take the phones. I basically have a backpack full of like 60 iPhones. And if you dropped your phone and broke it, one of the things that Orange Phones did was they said, within 10 minutes, we will get you a new phone. And so I would just be sitting there on a street corner and be like, ting, here's an address for a person who needs a phone. And you'd ride over there and you'd take the SIM card out of their old phone, put it in their new phone, and give them their phone back. Minutes later, they got a brand new phone. At the end of the day, I'd take all the broken iPhones back and they would repair them. And then those would be the ones that would go back out the next day to fill up the people's phones. And I kept going to this real estate office and delivering phones to them because they kept breaking them. And they were really nice folks. They're all Bangladeshi guys. And they invited me in for tea when it was pouring rain outside and that sort of thing. And then eventually offered me a job as a realtor. And I said, sure, yeah, 19-year-old Canadian kid, what could go wrong? And I did that for a few months until the 2008 financial collapse hit. And our office went from 32 realtors to 5 in about 6 months. And there was buildings being boarded up all over the place. And when we talk about the financial collapse and the recession of 2008 in Canada, we talk about, oh yeah, things really slowed down. In Europe, it was a big deal, especially in the UK. Like, thousands of people were losing their jobs. Like, there was people committing suicide, jumping off of buildings all the time. Like, it was really wild. And my dad had this really clever idea, which was, now that you're 21, you could go back to school as a mature student, and you don't have to have graduated high school. I did have to prove I could speak English, though, and I had to come and do a test to prove that I could, because I was, who knew? And then I could take the debt that I had incurred living in the UK and living the lifestyle that I was, and put it into a student loan and pay 0% on it while I worked through university, and then paid it back. And then I'd get a fresh start back at zero. And that's what I did. So I went to the tourism program at TRU. I had known people in Kamloops before coming here through the mountain biking world. And it just sort of seemed like a cool spot. Like, I wanted to live in the mountains, and I knew people here, and TRU had a program that would accept me as a mature student based on my sort of lived experience of being in tourism and that. And so that's how it all came together to be here in Kamloops. And I think Ed and I, my wife, both thought we would move back to the UK. But instead there was folks like Peter Moutry and who kind of kept pulling us into these things that we could participate in our community with. And I think that was the real benefit of Kamloops, was how involved so many people are here, and how close sort of those relationships are. The fact that I was a 20-year-old kid and I met the mayor and he gave me advice, like, what kind of craziness is that? Like, that would never happen in the UK. And I always struggled with that in the UK, and I still do, is that sort of classism that underwrites everything. It's like, you would never talk to a mayor. Like, who am I? I'm just some kid. Like, that's not an appropriate conversation to be having. And the sort of casualness of Canadians to just openly be ready to talk to just about anybody, I think that's a really cool thing. And I did learn in the UK that I was Canadian, that those types of egalitarian values that underlie my upbringing, I always sort of struggled against that in the UK. And so I think ultimately there was a confluence of factors, but none of them succinct, but here we are.
What's the biggest positive change you've seen in Kamloops in your time here?
There's been like a lot of, very neat projects. There's been a lot of neat cultural shifts. I remember when the Noble Pig first opened, and that was, what is this craft brewing craziness? And now we have a number of craft breweries in town that are all well supported. So that's an industry, obviously, that I'm involved in. And so I've seen that the support of local craft beer, not just in Kamloops, but across the province, has become like this sort of huge thing. And it's been really powerful in a place like Valemount, that 3 ranges could be opened by Mike Lewis, and it pulls people to Valemount. People that never would have stopped in Valemount now stop in Valemount. People who would never stop in Kamloops now stop in Kamloops. I think that the explosion, I think that Kamloops is at a bit of a turning point, and there's a lot of positive things and negative things that come with that. We're becoming a city. We're going over 100,000 people. We can no longer take it for granted that we're going to have 2 degrees of separation between absolutely everybody. We're starting to feel like business as usual isn't being done as business as usual. But there's a lot of disruptive things that have happened for that same reason. A strange one is the 4th Avenue pedestrian plaza project that the city council or the city planners did. I thought that was so cool. The idea that you would try out something in a little block of downtown and see if it worked. And then it's going to sound bizarre, but they did the same thing again as the merge lane going onto the bridge from downtown to the North Shore. That type of iterative, small scale, small risk thinking is like a game changer for our city. We can get out of that idea that it has to be a big project with tons of planning, that we can start to think smaller and think in smaller increments with smaller risk, and then they have outsized growth opportunities. And I think the openness of city staff, of council, and of our city to start accepting these little pilot projects, I think that that is a huge step forward in terms of us being able to adapt to becoming a city.
It seems in the news recently that many businesses are failing. Is it true, or is that just typical business?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in Kamloops now 13 years. Every year there's like, downtown is failing, right? It's like this ongoing thing. Downtown is failing, but it's not. Just because some businesses closed doesn't mean it's failing. That's a normal part of the business cycle. What you need to look at is, when they close, is someone leaping in to take their lease right away and start something new? If the answer is yes, that's a healthy business economy. When McDonald's downtown closed and got taken over by Klasky's, a local business, to me, that's a really big upshot, win. I think downtown just got a little bit better because of that. So I don't think that downtown's failing. I don't think that the business cycle is failing. But, we have a lot of things affecting our economy right now. We have baby boomers that are retiring, and tens of thousands of them retiring. And not only are we losing that part of the labor market in terms of people that are doing work, but we're losing people who are career people who generally stayed in a job their whole career and are experts at that job. And then we're trying to replace them with 30-year-old recent university grads and hoping that they perform the same. Somebody with 40 years of experience can get more work done in a day than a recent university grad can do in a week. And that's just a fact of experience. That's having the judgment and the confidence in your own decisions to be able to just pursue and be comfortable in your job role. And so when I look at our society, we're going to have a lot of struggles in business, but also in government and everything. BC Ferries can't find people to work for them. The city can't find people to work for them. Interior Health can't find people to work for them. Paramedics, they can't find anybody. Nurses, doctors, the labor shortage is the primary driver behind all of these things. And that's because we have this massive demographic bubble that's retiring, and there's no one to replace them. And Trudeau has announced that we're going to have 500,000 immigrants a year. Well, we were below replacement rate in our country in 1971. That's how long ago we stopped having enough babies to replace ourselves. And so we're 50 years behind the 8 ball here. We're not going to just suddenly fix this by being all right, turn on the immigration taps. People are going to come. It's needed. But my goodness, how is that going to affect everything from housing to, we have a chicken and egg problem. We have no housing, so we need people to build it. But the people we need to build it need to come from somewhere else, and they have nowhere to live. So there's nobody here to build the housing that they need them to live in, and it's this cyclical problem. And so I don't know what the answer is to that, but in terms of the business cycle, our labor costs have gone up substantially. So is everybody else's. That drives up the cost of transportation. That drives up the cost of food and ingredients. It drives up the cost of energy because those electricians are getting paid more now, and those desk clerks are getting paid more, and it's fueling inflation. And then it means your dollar goes less far when you can't go out to eat, which means businesses individually have less revenue and higher expenses, so then they start to fail. And so there'll be shrinkage, I have no doubt. And it'll be in every industry, including government, I think. I think this concept of the government is not going to hire their way out of this problem any more than the private sector is going to. So, yeah, I think it's probably going to be the biggest overall challenge of our generation. I think it's going to be bigger than climate change and, peak oil and things like that. I think this demographic bubble is going to we're not going to have as much as our parents did. We're just not.
The North Shore has always been kind of looked down upon in Kamloops. Have you seen a downward trend to the North Shore community, or is it crawling out of this stigma?
I think that the North Shore's stigma is the same as it was before. I don't think it's better or worse. I think it depends on who you talk to. I know last night we have a speakeasy in the basement called Nigel's. It was packed. Redbeard was packed. Bright Eye was packed. The new U Street Food Hall was packed. Collectively, that adds up to about 700 restaurant seats in the North Shore that wouldn't have been here 10 years ago. I don't think 10 years ago you would have packed the North Shore with 700 people on a given Friday night in January. So I would say that in terms of what people are doing with their behavior, I think that absolutely North Shore is getting better. I think from a visible street and trench problem, the North Shore has gotten worse. But that's true of our entire province and our entire country. Like, that's not a unique situation that is only on the North Shore. It's all over our city. And that will continue to be a problem because there's a lot of vulnerable people out there, and there's a lot of, inequality of opportunity that's prevalent in our society, and we don't have a good system of dealing with it. So in that sense, is the North Shore better or worse? It's a bit of both. But I also think it depends on who you're talking to. I moved here from bigger cities, from Edmonton and London. When people told me the North Shore was bad, I didn't understand what they were talking about. It's like, what exactly is bad about it? Oh, there's some homeless people. Okay. Like, my high school had like homeless people sleeping in the hallways all the time in Edmonton. Like, what's abnormal about that? There's people that are downtrodden all over the place. Being in London during some of the waves of various migrant crises, oh my goodness, like, what do we see here? Like, I mean, most of the people, for better or for worse, that are out here still have access to some support. Like, if you've seen migrant poverty, especially in developing worlds, like, I mean, oh my God, like, what we have here, like, we're doing all right. But I come from that other experience. But if you're moving here from Terrace or Smithers or Vanderhoof or, I don't know, Chetwynd or something, and it's like, maybe there's a couple people, like, in those smaller communities, poverty is insulated and protected, and it's not visible in the same way that it is here, and inequality isn't as prevalent and forthright in those small communities. And so if you move here from a place like that, and you turn up on Tranquille, and you go, holy shit, like, what, has the apocalypse hit? But then, man, go to LA, check out Skid Row. You want to see the apocalypse? Like, we're a long, long way from that. So, is the North Shore, like, the North Shore will always be a little gritty. It will always have visible inequality. It will always have, buildings that are not all the same age and not all in the same level of maintenance. But frankly, that's part of a healthy community. The idea of building everything new every 30 years is not only wasteful, but it's financially irresponsible and basically impossible. And so we're not going to have this pretty, shiny, we can't expect pretty and shiny and everybody to be the same demographic and same philosophy and same politics living in enclaves around our city. Like, that's not how it's going to be, and it's not a good thing for it to be that way. The complexity of the North Shore is not a flaw in the system, it's an opportunity. It's what builds healthy and stable communities in the long run, and I think we have to embrace that there is order without design, that there is opportunity and complexity. And so sort of in summary on that point is, as we become a bigger city, those stigmas will become less of a negative. When you go to Vancouver, like, we all travel to Vancouver probably a couple times a year because of the opportunities and amenities that are there, but there is visibly much more street problems in Vancouver than there is here. We take that as a trade-off. And it doesn't really make the news. You don't see people talking in the news in Abbotsford about daily micro interactions that have happened, but you do in Kamloops. And that's because in Kamloops, we're still a small enough community that we believe that micro interactions are something that we should be paying attention to. And so I think that, in another 5 or 6 years, you're going to see the media coverage of this stuff really de-escalate, and that in itself will lower the stigma, but not because anything on the ground actually changed. It was just our perception and our context and our interaction with it changed.
You're a writer. You've published a book. You've got a community blog about development, a self-professed high school dropout. Why should people listen to Mitch's ideas for community development?
Well, to be honest, my writing is specifically a therapeutic process for me. I often use it as a way to really hash out my thoughts and challenge myself onto whether my like logic will even hold up to my own scrutiny, let alone somebody else's. We all get in our own heads about being convinced that something works some way. But when you actually have to write something that you're going to put out to the world for people to read, you suddenly like have to challenge yourself, and you kind of go, ooh, maybe I was a little off base on that one, you know? And so I find that aspect of it therapeutic. I think the thing that I bring to the table in my ideas in both about development and community building and that sort of thing is that in my short life, I've had a lot of mentors who have taught me things from different places and provided me with different contexts and ideas and ways of seeing the world. And I've been lucky enough to grow up in sort of enough self-confidence that I can sort of be open-minded without feeling like I'm assailing my own ego on it. I can see that there's other ways of knowing and being and thinking that are not my own, and seeing that there's truth in them, that there's benefits. And by virtue of being a small business owner, I'm a generalist. You know, like I'm not that good at very many things, but I know how to do a bunch of stuff. You know, so I have a shallow knowledge of a broad field of things. And I think a lot of the political discourse in our country and our era is really exacerbated by how siloed each of us are in our worlds, whether we're in the arts or the sciences or finance or accounting or law or courts or whatever. You're in this silo of thought, and then you think you're so smart because everybody in every other silo has no idea about your silo. You know, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, those people don't understand game theory. What do they know about this? And it's like, the other guy's like, yeah, because you don't know anything about growing barley, you idiot, you know? And so everybody ends up feeling like they're the smartest one in the room because their context is their own silo. And with social media and the way that education has gone and specialization of work, we keep doing that more and more and more. And so it's probably a rather arrogant thing to suggest. I just sort of, I would hope that my generalism spans a number of these silos, and my social networks sort of span a number of these silos, and I feel like often I can be like, oh, you want that, and you want that, and you want that. And you're all speaking the same language, but you don't understand each other's context and each other's silos, and I see that especially with property development. You know, property developers are just like restaurateurs. They make a sandwich, and then they sell the sandwich for enough money to pay their bills and make a little profit. The people who make money in property are the people who speculate on land. They buy and hold land for a long period of time until the valuation goes up high enough that they sell it for a tidy profit and then pass it off. You know, that is fueling the cost of housing. Cheap debt fuels that a lot. Property, like you're rewarded for contributing nothing to our society. Buying and holding land is not, you're not doing anything for any of us. You're leeching off of the investments and risks that everybody else around you has made. As the North Shore gets better and better and better, it's because of the risks of people like you who have put their heart and soul into making this spot awesome, and you've risked everything to do it. And the person who's got the bare lot a block away that's sitting there, it's not housing for anybody. In fact, they get security guys to come and kick homeless people off of it because you better not let them sleep on that bare lot. You know, they don't provide shelter, they're not providing food, they're not providing entertainment or value for anybody. They're just sitting there, holding that land so they can make a buck when they sell it. And that is where the property system falls apart. But a lot of people have never been exposed to that. All they do is they see these new luxury apartments go up, and they're like, holy shit, that one bedroom's $400,000? That's crazy. But if the land was $6 million that they had to build this apartment building on, and they fit 80 units on it, you're $200,000 an apartment before you build the building. You know, that's what drives the cost of development predominantly. And so we don't really have a free market for development. And so as I explain this to people, and I'll bring people along the ride of, well, if you'd like to see this change in your community, how do you do it? Well, we're going to build a building. Great. Where are you getting the land from? Well, here. And then we got it. And so I find that I'm able to bring people along on the ride because I've sort of been at each stage, from the real estate transaction to being involved in construction to being both a landlord and a leasee from a landlord, from having staff and being an HR person to deal with those staff, as well as being a staff member myself to other people. You know, like I feel like my experience is broader than most people, typically because I have no concept of risk and I just, you know, follow my heart and hope for the best a lot. What do they say? Eyes closed, head first, can't lose. And so, yeah, I think if there's merit in any of my ideas, it's simply because I feel like I've had the opportunity and social connection to see it from more angles than the average person has.
What's your advice for young people wanting to make a difference in their community?
I think I just said it, didn't I? Eyes closed, head first, can't lose.
Follow your heart. Follow your dreams.
Yeah, actually, this is going to be strange to follow up that comment with. But something that my dad taught me was that work is what you do to afford the things you love, and you shouldn't take the things that you love and turn them into work. And that is counter to what a lot of people in our generation have been told. Is that we've been told that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But what I've seen time and time again is that people who do what they love becomes a chore. And suddenly they don't love what they once loved, but they haven't replaced it with something new they love either. And I see a lot of people that get trapped in that are especially in their 30s. They sort of capped out their career on where they're going to go. They don't love their career anymore because it turns out doing the same thing, 60 hours a week, every week for 10 years is kind of like blood sucking. And then they don't have hobbies anymore. And man, if there's one thing that young people don't have, it's hobbies. Like, you need hobbies. Like, you need to, participate in a local theater troupe or start a band or learn to play an instrument but so many people nowadays, the only hobbies they have are things that they immediately try to monetize. They try to sell their crafts on Etsy or something like that. And it's like, no, my hobby is skiing. I love skiing. I'm obsessed with skiing. It's like all I want to do. And everything I do in my life is motivated towards going skiing. And every extra dollar and minute that I have, that's what I want to devote it to. And by having that thing, I get such a release from the stress of my work life, from the things that occupy my thoughts as I, go through a daily life doing whatever. And it brings good balance and that sort of thing. And I pay money to go skiing, I don't get paid to. And I remember there was a time where I thought, man, wouldn't it have been cool to have been a professional skier? Get paid to go skiing every day? But no, it would have turned it into work. It would have turned it into this thing that I have to do now. And then it'd be like, Mitch, I know it's minus 22 out today, but the film crew's up and the helicopter's here, so you got to go jump off that cliff. And you'd be like, but, I'm tired today and my back is sore. And they're like, yeah, Mitch, it's like our operating budget's $5,000 a minute right now, so off the cliff you go. And you'd be like, oh, God. I'm so happy that I get to do the things that I love on my terms because they're my hobbies and they're what I love. And I think that it's a strange lesson maybe to tell somebody who's young. And it's not that you won't find a job that you love, because I do love my job. But it's not like I didn't go to school. Like, I didn't go to bed as like a 12-year-old thinking, I'm going to cook in a restaurant my whole life. I can't wait. It's like, no, I just found out that I was actually kind of half decent at cooking, and I generally liked the camaraderie of being on the kitchen line, and I liked being in that environment. I mean, the best thing about a restaurant is that everybody who's there is there to have a good time. I think about being a police officer. Like, you're dealing with people in crisis mode all the time. It could be like the nicest person on planet Earth, but they're in crisis mode, and it's going to suck. And I could be dealing with the worst person on Earth, but they're here having like a bottle of wine and dinner with their friends, and they're in a great mood. It's like, I think like how blessed I am to be in that position, why I got attracted to it in the first place. But it still worked for me. Like, it is my job and it is what I do. And I think that it might seem fun when you're 20 to go and follow your heart and do whatever, but my advice would be you're probably better off finding something that makes you useful to other people, whether that means you're a framer or an electrician or whatever, and then making sure it makes you enough money that you can afford to go do the things that you want to do and have the lifestyle you want to have. So I don't know. That would be my young person advice, as a young person myself.
Well, thank you very much, Mitch, for coming by at Conversations.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you very much for coming to Conversations as well. We'll see you next time.